This is Let Your Voice Be Heard, right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
I don't know what I'm saying no more, man. We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you are just tuning in, I am being put on flash by the one and only Selena Hill because she thinks that I always need flash, even though there's mad lights in this room. This is Stanley Fritz. You can find me on Twitter at Stan Fritz. You can find me on IG at Stan Fritz. You can find me on Snapchat at Darkskin Swindle. I am here with the immaculate Tammy and, of course, Josh Moneybag Yo Clennon and Selena Yonsei Curly Hair Hill. We are all here for another action-packed episode of Let Your Voice Be Heard. And listen, guys, it's going to be a real fun show. So fun, I'm going to let Tammy tell us about it. Tammy, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about capitalism, baby. We're talking about
Hold on. Don't talk to me about capitalism with your eyelashes looking that good. Come on, sis.
No, but we live in the system. So am I going to buy Fenty? Yes, I am. If you support capitalism, buy black, okay?
When are going to make Fenty savage for slim, thick men like myself? I want to wear sexy lingerie.
Do you?
No. What else are we talking about today, guys?
Well, we are talking about a lot. I mean, this is a show where we talk race, politics, and culture every Sunday live on WHCR 90.3 FM. And then, of course, on the podcast, wherever you guys get your podcasts, we're there as well. So make sure you guys tune in and share, leave comments and feedback. Yeah, so we have a great show. We need to talk about, hopefully, Trump's impeachment, acquittal.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, basically. We need to talk about that. Gayle King, all over the news. I actually ran into her last night at the Barclays Center and chopped it up real quick, so we'll talk about that.
Can we please talk about your hug with Oprah, too?
So last night, Oprah hugged me like I was her first child. Like I was her best goddaughter. It was like a, come here, baby.
All right, guys.
I was like,
a quick break.
First of all, don't disrespect Auntie Oprah. So Auntie
She's out of pocket, too.
Hello, somebody.
Ooh, you know what? We're not going to talk about our black women journalists like that. There's a lot to talk about.
Once you keep the same energy for Harvey Weinstein, then we can talk
right?
about it.
All right, yes.
Where it at, though?
All right, well, anyway, look, y'all can have y'all hate. I'm up there. I was in her bosems. I was in her arms.
All right.
I was.
In her bosoms?
I was.
Did you at least take it to dinner first?
No, every mother holds their child in their bosom.
So Oprah's your mom now?
That's what I'm saying.
You talking like you slid into her DMs. You was in her bosom?
You guys are so perverted. That's a regular term.
Speaking of bosom, I also really want to talk about Meg the Stallion.
Yes, because G-Eazy was all in her bosom.
She gets it. She gets
I'm not mad. Yes, sis.
Good for her.
What did she get?
G-Eazy.
Oh, you didn't see? There was a video of G-Eazy kissing on her and rubbing on her as she was laying on him on a couch at a party with her whole thick thighs all around him. I said, Lord, if I could just morph my body into a man named Gerald, it'd be over. Yup.
Listen, he don't know what to do with all that. Listen, he don't know what to do with that.
Y'all be hating on black women.
That's the big piece of chicken. You don't know what to do with that, boy. Pass that over here for the blacks.
Nonetheless, we have a lot to talk about. So we're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're talking Gayle, we're talking Oprah, we're talking bosoms, and we're talking black capitalism. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard.
I know you don't do one night stands, so I'm the closest thing.
Can we what and still be friends, G-Eazy? Is that why Meg Thee Stallion said they're friends? Because they're smushing and they're still just being friends? Is that what's happening, guys?
He couldn't handle it. I'm sure he didn't.
I'm sure he couldn't. But you know what? It'll be a fun time losing. We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM, WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you are just tuning in, this is Stanley Fritz. I'm here with the whole squad. Selena Hill, Timmy David, Joshua, Black, Socialist, or maybe Capitalist. Clennon, you tell us, J Money. And of course, we got the latest photographer in the photographer streets over here. If you are watching on Facebook Live, I appreciate you. BB, are you there? I see you, Queen Bianca. Thank you as always. Caress Lave, thank you so much for being on here. And listen, folks, we got a great conversation to be had today. But before we get to black capitalism, a lot of stuff has happened in the news. Did you guys see what happened at the conclusion of Donald Trump and the great impeachment emancipation?
Yeah. So as we knew, Donald Trump was acquitted. Big surprise there. And he's basically been on a parade boasting about it. He went to the National Prayer Breakfast and held up the Washington Post and USA Today articles that said acquitted. And he was like, this is the best word ever. Totally acquitted, which was 2 words. But anyway, so basically he we knew this was happening. I just felt like Democrats took a really big loss this week with, the impeachment trial, the whole big mess that's happening in Iowa. A lot of the Democratic establishment, they were banking on Joe Biden. That's their man. That's their right hand. He came in fourth place. Mm-hmm. It was scandal. It was just so much.
Listen. We all knew Donald Trump wasn't going to get impeached. You know what was a big deal, though?
What?
When Mitt Romney voted to impeach him.
Yes, right.
Mitt Romney.
Yep.
So last time we saw Mitt Romney, he was getting his behind kicked in the 2012 presidential election where he didn't write a concession speech because he thought Mormon Jesus was going to save him from Barack Hussein Drama. And that did not happen. And I thought that he was somebody who didn't have a backbone and who didn't stand for anything. But look at this. He voted to impeach the president. And that's going to cost him a lot personally and professionally. How did you guys feel about that?
I don't think it's going to cost him that much because he's been the Republican that's anti-Trump. Like, he's kind of like leading but not really leading the Republican anti-Trump movement.
Not really, because he'll say Trump did something bad and then vote on everything that Trump wants to do.
I mean, it's very common to vote along party lines, especially when it comes to policy, but look at the demographic that he typically represents. He is now representing highly religious people who maybe might not be in line with the way Trump carries his business. He's from liberal Massachusetts, so there is not really so much surprise that he wasn't in line for this vote. He's
a senator of Utah, though.
Yeah.
Right.
So, that demographic is 99.9% white, and the rest is spicy mayo.
Yeah, Josh, what do you think about
white
Mitt?
people with black hair.
I think Mitt Romney, he made a decision to be a statesman. I think that's how he wants to be remembered. He knows that this whole debacle with Trump and the way that the Republican Party has just polluted themselves with Trump for the sake of winning elections. He knows that's going to be short-lived, and he's thinking listen, I don't want to be remembered years from now as going on with this, enabling this, because history is not going to look kindly on any of them, especially Mitch McConnell.
I actually thought Susan Collins was going to vote to impeach Trump, too. I was surprised that she didn't.
Me too.
And I was really happy that Mitt voted. He said he voted according to his heart and according to his faith. And then we know Trump afterward was like, I don't like people who use their faith to do wrong things. And that's almost like a direct quote.
Can I ask a question, though, guys?
Yes.
Who won the Iowa primary?
So
Bernie.
Bernie has.
Don't play yourself. Bernie won.
Do you want to? I know you. We know you are a big Bernie supporter, aka Bernie bro. You want to talk about what this means for Bernie?
Bernie King.
I mean, Bernie is the only dude he's the only candidate who can make it. He's the only one who's gonna go the distance. I mean, even so, Biden is basically falling apart. Everybody knows he's been falling apart for a while. That's why Bloomberg even jumped in. But now you have, for the establishment wing, you have Pete Buttigieg leading the way. And honestly, I don't think people still have strong concerns on whether or not he can actually win in a general election.
Mm-hmm.
So
who, Bernie?
No, Pete Buttigieg.
Oh yeah, of course.
So
and I hate him.
Honestly, at this point, Bernie is the most viable candidate. I don't think that's a hard pill for a lot of people in the Democratic Party to swallow right now, but it's the truth.
So
Tammy, well, I want to get Tammy's thoughts
on
this.
Hippies first, all right.
I do. I really do. Tammy, what do you think about this?
I am a hard Bernie fan. I've been a hard Bernie fan because to me it is appalling that we are the richest country in the world and we don't even have basic health care. That kills me.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes sense that Bernie's leading the way, and he definitely won that primary. I feel like that whole Iowa disaster was just the Democrats fumbling because they realized he got it on lock, and they wanted to do anything they could to keep him out of public sight, but they couldn't. His base is so strong, and with his promises, with his policy representation of working class people, it's no wonder he is literal bae.
Bernie won that primary.
Yes, he did.
The fix is obviously in. The Democratic Party, the DNC, has this app that no one has ever talked about before, no one has ever used, made by Robbie Mook, the guy that ran Hillary's campaign, her losing presidential campaign, might I add. And the app completely crashes, and there started being problems with the votes and the Iowa polling a couple of days before the election, as it was showing that Bernie was pulling away. And Pete Buttigieg, who was fading, all of a sudden does just as good as Bernie, if not better in some places, and announces that he won before any vote is counted. And maybe some of this is being motivated by my deep hatred for Pete Buttigieg as an empty suit, but yeah. Bernie absolutely won that primary, and he's going to win the New Hampshire race as well. And then hopefully that should shut Pete up a little bit.
And Stanley, do you think, that being said, do you think Bernie's going to win the nomination?
I think he's in good position to win it.
Okay.
Yeah.
One other thing that you should also point out is that Pete Buttigieg's campaign had prior contracts with the same app developer.
Boom. Yeah, it's
With
true.
the same app developer.
It's true.
That's a
Politics are dirty. But speaking of dirty, we need to talk Gayle. We need to talk Oprah. We need to talk Lisa Leslie, right? So
Yes.
everyone is talking about the controversial interview Gayle King did with Lisa Leslie. We know that, she was talking about Kobe's life and his legacy. And one of the questions she asked was, how do you feel about, the 2003 rape case where it was dropped, so he was acquitted. And she was like, that's not the Kobe I know. And then she was like, yeah, but you would say that because you're his friend. And she was like, we have it. We have a clip. Okay, great. So we're going to play a clip of that now. Gayle King, Lisa Leslie. Let's play it.
He was going to be in the WNBA. It's been said that his legacy is complicated because of sexual assault charge, which was dismissed in 2003, 2004. Is it complicated for you as a woman, as a WNBA player? It's not complicated for me at all. Even if there's a few times that we've been at a club at the same time. Kobe's not the kind of guy, never been like, Lisa, go get that girl or tell her or send her this. I have other NBA friends that are like that. Mm-hmm. He was never like that. I just never have ever seen him being the kind of person that would do something to violate a woman or be aggressive in that way. That's just not the person that I know. But Lisa, you wouldn't see it though. As his friend, you wouldn't see it. And that's possible. Mm-hmm. I just don't believe that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying things didn't happen. Mm-hmm. I just don't believe that things didn't happen with.
All right, so again, that was Gayle King interviewing Lisa Leslie. While we were playing the clip, Josh, you were sitting here shaking your head. Let's jump right into it, and then I'll talk about, me meeting Gayle last night. Go ahead.
My problem with Gayle King and the Oprahs and why don't they do this when they're still alive? Like, nobody had this energy when Kobe won an Oscar. Where is it? I don't mind you feeling that way and voicing that opinion, but do it while they're alive. You don't wait until they die and then next second, let's bring up all this stuff. You're just trying to besmirch somebody's legacy. You try to drag him and his whole family through the mud. Like, have some respect.
Okay, thank you, Josh, because I feel like that opinion represents a lot of what people feel. I adamantly disagree.
Same.
No one is trying to drag Kobe Bryant's legacy in the dirt. First of all, if you're a journalist and you're having a conversation about someone's life, legacy, and the totality of that, unfortunately, you're going to have to talk about their controversies. I do not think for 1 second Gayle King had an agenda or Oprah had an agenda. I think their agenda was, I have to ask these hard questions as a journalist because, first of all, it wasn't a tribute to Kobe Bryant. She was not trying to honor Kobe Bryant. She was interviewing a subject about him. And that's what journalists do. They ask the tough questions that no one does. And also, if you pay attention to what journalists do, they do follow-up questions because you're not a traditionally trained journalist knows that you don't just let someone give an answer and you walk away. Unless you're afraid or, lazy, you have to keep pushing them. So to me,
I gotta jump in.
No, you can jump in. But what I'm trying to say is that I understand not everyone understands or can empathize or whatever and feels upset about what Gayle did when she was doing her job. I have a different perspective because I work in that same vein. I will say the thing that is upsetting me is the way she's getting dragged. Go ahead, Stanley.
First off, let's be very clear. The way that people are reacting to Gayle is 100% inappropriate and disrespectful. Let's get that out of the way first off. But while that is true, it is also true she didn't have to do this. Josh, I want to push back on you. People did bring up Kobe's rape case again, particularly when he won the Oscar for that Letter to Basketball video. They brought it up. It was mostly white feminists at that point, but they were bringing it up again. And that was Gayle's chance to talk to Kobe about it if she wanted to.
Right.
And folks didn't do that. My problem with this is you are absolutely right. You got to talk about the totality of the person, but he hasn't even been buried yet. You couldn't hold this for a little bit?
You mean hold the entire interview? Because there's no point of doing an interview about him if you're not going to talk about it.
That's not true.
But
that's not true. That was one piece of his life. And if you're going to talk about that, then talk about the whole thing, because they don't talk about the fact that the case was acquitted because the woman refused to testify.
Gail did bring that up.
And then they didn't talk about the fact that Kobe actually apologized to the woman and settled out of court. No one talks about that to show the shift. They just bring up this right here, and you push Lisa Leslie on this. It's like, come on. They hadn't even buried this guy in his family.
And that's totally inappropriate to even ask Lisa Leslie about.
Tammy, jump in.
I just want to say I get where both sides are coming from, but I will say the way she asked was really respectful. And a lot of people that brought up the charge, they didn't talk about the dismissal. Before she even finished the question and allowed Lisa Leslie to answer, she said, by the way, which was dismissed. So I think that's, she was kind of doing her job.
Yeah, but it was what she was implying. She was implying that he was guilty.
Well, I don't think she was doing that.
Yes, she was.
That's your perception.
Even as she was continuing the question, well, Lisa, you wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have seen it because you're...
But if you would have known, why even ask her?
Well, so Tamika Mallory did chime in on Instagram Live. She says, and I quote, "I don't agree, sis. My son is also chiming in. He says, you have a responsibility to respect that man's family and his children. That interview was not the time." To me, what I will say, because, and I definitely understand that, if you don't want to talk about the full totality of someone's life, do not do the interview. And let me say this too. Hours after Kobe Bryant was after he was killed in that crash, every news reporter from CNN, MSNBC, they were talking about it, but they also addressed the controversy, and they did it. No, people were not calling every single network garbage because, maybe some people were, but they were talking about it as news reporters from a journalistic stance about who this man was. And a lot of what I saw was people were like, let's look at how he evolved. Let's look at how he changed.
We were like that in here, and some publications were like that. But most people, when they were talking about that rape story, it was people just publishing the article with no context or saying, I'm glad Kobe's dead.
That was that reporter from the Washington Post.
Like, listen. The way that people are treating Gayle King is flat out disrespectful. You should not do that. However, keep that same energy for Harvey Weinstein's people. Keep that same energy for all these white folks who were sexually harassing and Me Tooing the crap out of white women and other women. But I don't see Gayle pressing anybody about that.
When is she going to interview Harvey?
She pressed R.
When is she
Kelly.
What
do you mean she's not pressing anybody?
But that's the agenda. They're only doing it against black men.
Well, hold on. I'm not going to agree with that 100%, Josh. I'm not going to agree with that 100%. What I will say is that I have not seen it. Now, the R. Kelly,
obviously.
R. Kelly is an easy target, and it didn't happen until Surviving R. Kelly came out, when everybody has known for 20 years that R. Kelly is a sexual predator. My frustration is like, listen, I get it. We can have a full conversation about Kobe Bryant. I'm here for that. But can we at least wait till he's buried? Damn. The family just got the body back the other day.
Well, and I'll say this. So last night when I, briefly ran into Gayle, it did seem like it was something that was heavy upon her. Even Oprah mentioned it a number of times at the Barclays Center. Like, I had a really hard week, because she did have a hard week. And she talked about... Of course. So what Gayle said is, I'm getting death threats. She seems very upset about what Snoop said in particular.
No. That was over the line.
Snoop went way
He threatened her as well.
He spoke his mind.
He
spoke his mind. Bro, when you gonna, if you're gonna be like,
it is 100%,
you gotta expect smoke.
It is 100% unacceptable to have any threats of violence towards any black woman, towards any woman, period.
He didn't really threaten her.
Yes, he did at the end.
And he called her a B, and he disparaged her.
He said, we're gonna come get you.
No. That is flat out wrong. We will accept no disrespect towards
on
any
social
black
media.
woman.
He's not.
Let's go ahead, Tammy.
You have a responsibility when you're in the public eye. Honestly, Gayle is a journalist. She did what she had to do, but Snoop Dogg is like a social figure. Like, look at the type of people he caters to.
He's an entertainer.
It doesn't matter. Didn't he rebrand himself 100 times? Doesn't he have 100 hats? Doesn't he have 100 jobs? Like, at the end of the day, when white people see Snoop Dogg saying things like this about our women, what are they going to say behind the camera?
I mean, white people will say what they want to say, because white people will always white, because that's what white people do best. However, when other young black boys see somebody like Snoop Dogg disrespecting black women, that makes them feel like it's okay. And it's never okay to disrespect black women. It is never okay to threaten black women. We should not be normalizing violence against women. I don't care if you don't like what she said. I didn't like what she said either. I didn't think it made sense to ask that during the period. But no, Gail is doing her job as a reporter. We can not like that she asked that question and respect that she's a reporter and respect her as a human being. And I'm sorry if she's going through a tough time. How do you think Kobe's 17-year-old daughter felt when she saw that all over the internet?
Exactly.
Well, I'll say this because we do have to wrap it up. But Key also chimed in on Instagram. He says Snoop is not a nice guy. He is a gangster at the end of the day. So I guess we shouldn't.
Whoa. Don't do that.
That's what. What do you mean, Stanley?
Just like we're not gonna throw up Kobe's past on him. We're not gonna throw up Snoop's past on him.
No, he's saying that's his character. Snoop has never proclaimed to be Mr. Nice Guy. So why do we have high expectations? Like he calls black women bees and hoes all the time.
No, but that's his
music.
persona as an entertainer.
So
it's not like who's gonna make a public threat on social media and really follow through with
look,
it. Like,
I was not cool with that. To me, you don't make threats because what happens is you're triggering other people who hear that to actually take action. No, Snoop is not going to do it. But what about someone who may be mentally deranged?
I agree with that.
Exactly. And then when you see, again, Gayle King's walking around the Barclays Center, there's hundreds of people there. So anyway, I'll just say this just to wrap it up. I was actually very surprised about all of the vitriol response that this caused. I think that a lot of us feel like if something happened in somebody's past and it's controversial, we should just leave it there. But the bottom line is, and the reality is, everything gets brought up. Especially even after Michael Jackson passed, I was mourning his death, and I turned on ABC and I turned on the networks, and they were talking about the number of charges and controversies that he went through, and I didn't like to see that. But in the same way, did I think they had an agenda, or did I think that they're reporting on the totality of his life?
It just feels like it only happens to black men. We don't get a chance to be forgiven
Fair.
or move past it.
That's fair, and we're gonna have to end it. We're gonna have to end it there because obviously the stakes are very different when it comes to black men and black women. And there was another comment that said the black community needs peace and we need to come together. So we're just gonna end on that. We're gonna take a quick break, but we'll be right back. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard.
We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. We definitely did shake the room with that debate. If you are just tuning in, we just finished the news roundup where we talk about stories that made you laugh, cry, curse, or flip a table. And we had a fiery debate about Gayle King's questioning to Lisa Leslie about Kobe Bryant's past. And now we are shifting gears because it is time to talk about Black Capitalism. Selena, hit us with the figgity facts.
Okay, so this is an ongoing discussion that we've been having here on Let Your Voice Be Heard as well as in our communities. And I think one of the reasons why is because Jay-Z, right? We saw what he did last year and, Let Your Voice Be Heard, we covered it. We talked about the fact that he partnered with the NFL. And I think that the conclusion between most of us was that it was a money move for Jay, who is unapologetic about being a capitalist and being about the bag. But also, if you ask me, who talked to him about it, I do think that he believes he's making a social impact and he wants to make change. You don't have to agree with me there, but that's my personal beliefs after talking to him. Regardless of the fact, it's coming back around. The conversation has definitely recirculated. Why? Because at the Super Bowl, Jay showed up with his whole family. They were made seated during the national anthem. And we all were like, okay, a little silent protest. Okay, Jay's still about it. No, he comes like 2 days later. He's like, oh, no, I was not protesting. I would not even put my daughter through that. We were so busy being in awe with Demi Lovato singing the national anthem, we just forgot to stand. So then I think that again, is re-triggering a lot of feelings because people don't feel like Jay they're questioning, is he really for the community or is he for himself? Is he really is he a person that is trying to empower through economic empowerment, by setting an example, by becoming the first hip hop billionaire, or is that something that's happening to his own detriment? And I think that for a lot of us, we felt like who is this Jay-Z, right? Like what is his message? What is his agenda? So I'm going to just leave it there. And I want to open up this conversation because we've been talking a lot about it. And Stanley,
yeah,
you're someone who's idolized Jay-Z. What are your initial thoughts about how he's been moving within the last few months?
I don't like it. I don't like it not one bit. I think that when I saw they were making a big story out of it when Jay-Z and Beyonce was sitting for the national anthem, and I thought like that was like I was just annoyed, and I thought that was a little like it was done in poor taste because it's like, fam, you sold out Cap. Don't sit down now after you got your check. I'm not really interested. And then he came out and said, well, I actually wasn't doing that. It was just a coincidence.
Yep.
You know, what a surprise there. I've given up on putting hopes that like people that strive to chase after money will see that the only way to liberation is through actually radical theory. Like, I expect Jay-Z to chase the bag, and that's what it's going to be.
Josh, before you chime in, we have a comment. Someone says, I think Jay is playing politics. That's how he got on the inside. Joshua, is Jay-Z right? Do you think that black capitalism is the way to black liberation?
I don't like
I
the
know that's
term
deep.
black capitalism.
Okay.
But I think black people as a community have to become self-reliant. We have to stop having to go to other communities to get jobs, to get capital. When we're in that position, we're always going to be in a weakened position where we're reliant on another community, you know, to basically sustain ourselves.
Like the way Jay-Z went and relied on the NFL to get another bag.
Jay-Z is not... Listen, I'm not expecting Jay-Z to do anything for me in my life. I'm a man. I'm going to handle my business. I'm going to take care of my family. That's the attitude everybody in the black community needs to have. When we do that, we're going to live. It's like a tide on a boat. You know, we're going to lift each other up.
So you think Jay-Z's making a good example of doing that, how he's lifted his family?
I mean, yeah, he is an example. He's an inspiration for a lot of people, and he's provided opportunities to, you know, more people than we know. That's what you need to do. When you get in a position of power, then you can provide opportunities to people who look like you. That's what it's all about. But nobody is going to save anybody. People got to save themselves.
Tammy, I want you to chime in here because, you know, as we talk about capitalism as the way to liberation, we hear a lot about black economic power, especially me. I work at Black Enterprise Magazine. That is literally part of our mission. What do you think about that?
I don't believe that capitalism or, quote, economic liberation, unquote, is the key to solving our community issues, because at the end of the day, capitalism relies on black pain. It relies on black poverty. Literally, the prison industrial complex is a key of using black labor and black force without payment. And so when I see these people like Jay-Z, right, who have spent their whole lives being honestly selfish, stepping on other people's backs, not really taking care of anybody outside of their own, and then to come and say that they're doing this for the culture and for the community, it feels so fake to me. All we see is how Jay-Z presents himself to us. But you better believe that when he's at that table with all those white board members, he's not sticking up for the ghetto. Absolutely, and that's a fact. I don't believe that getting a seat at the table will provide suddenly a meal to everyone in the community. I think at the end of the day, it's just all about him.
Stanley?
Yeah, I think it's kind of silly to say that once people start focusing on taking care of them and their family, that will be better and all boats will rise. Black people have been doing that. Black folks have been doing that, and every time they have started to build some sustainability, white supremacy has destroyed it. We can look at Oklahoma, we can look at redlining, we can look at what used to be a black town in Central Park where they tore it down to make space for white people. It's not an issue of black folks wanting to have their own and build their own. It is an issue of white supremacy getting in the way. And capitalism is naturally extractive, and it needs someone who they can put their boot on. And for as long as I can remember, and as long as history has shown us, it has been people who are not white and mostly black people. So, you know, if you're going to get to the level that Jay-Z is, where you're a billionaire, there has to be some kind of theft somewhere.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you said that. Before we go on break, Joshua, quickly, I mean, honestly speaking, can you become a millionaire or billionaire without hurting people?
I mean, you definitely can. There's people who do it in a variety of ways. There's listen, we can go all day about this, but the fact of the matter is capitalism is faulted. There's definitely
point one, socialism.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I'm a democratic socialist. There are aspects of capitalism that need to be reformed and regulated. But what is the alternative to what you're speaking of?
Socialism.
No, but you're not talking at the individual level. You're saying that somebody cannot bank on supporting their family and empowering themselves. So what should they do?
Well,
Destroy white supremacy.
Well, we'll get to that, because if it's not capitalism, What is it? Let's take a break and then we'll answer that question. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard.
We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you are just tuning in, this is Stanley Fitz. I'm here with Selena Hill, Timmy David, and of course Joshua Clennon, and we are having a conversation about black capitalism. Can it save you? Joshua says no one person will save you, and he doesn't like the phrase of black capitalism, but thinks we should be focusing on building ourselves and our communities up and our families, and if we do that, boats will rise. Tammy thinks that socialism is the way. I agree, and Selena is going to tell us what she thinks. But before we get back to the conversation, I want you guys to know about a couple of great things that are happening. So today at 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon with Professor Pamela Laskin, children's author and director of the City College Poetry Outreach Center, Professor Laskin will discuss and read from her 2 newest young reader books, share and explore writing about some of the big problems confronting humanity, like black capitalism, and, of course, when she's done with all of that, families, writers, and all concerned human beings will have a chance to participate in a deeper conversation. This event will be held at the Revolution Books at 437 Malcolm X Boulevard at 132nd Street. For more information, please call 212-691-3345. And if you think that's not enough, we have one more event happening on February 11th at 6:30 p.m. The NAACP at City College presents Amateur Night at the Apollo. As you all know, Selena hosted and bodied that a couple of years ago. So if you want to see what it's like to be there without her, come show off your talent, come enjoy not filled entertainment, and if you win, a prize will be given to the most talented person. This event will be held at the City College of New York, located at 160 Convent Avenue in Shepherd Hall, room 95. Free food. Oh, I might come. Enjoy. So, guys, we are back. We're having a big debate about black capitalism, and we can't wait to hear from you. Nadia says that Jay-Z shows us who he is consistently, and we refuse to believe him. B.B. Johnson is all with you, Tammy. She thinks Jay-Z is a politician, and she thinks socialism is the way to go. Josh, when we were going on break, you were mentioning that capitalism does have some things that needs to change. Is that correct?
Yeah, you said it should be reformed.
It needs to be reformed.
How so?
Well, certain institutions like the healthcare industry, education, and government in itself, there's too much profiteering. You know, that needs to be regulated. You need to get money out of politics. You know, the healthcare system, the first objective needs to be, you know, addressing the health of people, making them healthy, not just pumping them with drugs to address symptoms and not causes. And education, I mean, are our kids really being educated on what they need to do and what they need to know to be successful in society? I don't think so.
You know why, right? Because of capitalism.
Well,
that's exactly what I just said.
Yeah. Well, Tammy's alternative is communism. Explain.
Oh, no.
So here's the thing, right? And I'm not even going to get on air and say, like, you know, I 100% believe that communism can work because I've never seen it and I don't know that. But when you think about reform, when you look at democratic socialism, this is something that we see already in Europe. The problem is that capitalism is a beast that shifts itself and mitigates. So what happens when you get free healthcare? Maybe you'll start paid a little less. What happens when there's a rent cap? Utilities might go up because Con Ed still owns the monopoly of power in New York City. Capitalism is always going to find a way to adapt, so we need to find a system that isn't based on some sort of like financial economic worth. At the end of the day, as long as there are overlords determining our worth through pay and people commodifying resources, we'll never get a chance to be free.
Stanley, what is your alternative?
I think we need to move to socialism or some form of communism. But it's not just that. You also have to dismantle white supremacy. The piece that people don't understand about capitalism is that capitalism cannot work without white supremacy and sexism because you need someone at the bottom of the rung to keep on kicking. And we have all grown up in this thing, so we've literally been socialized under this institution to think it is the only way of life. Do you know how much decolonizing of minds we have to do? We can't talk about shifting our economic structure until we convince white people that that's not a real thing. Because as long as white people think that they are white and white supremacy is prevalent, they will kill and burn everything to the ground before they switch over to any other system. And it's hard to see outside of any system if this is the only thing you've been through, so we have to put in an effort to educate folks. But if we do that, we can reframe things and take corporate interest out of healthcare, like Josh said, out of education, out of food, out of housing, out of water. Why are we making a profit off of things that people need to survive on? We got to get away from that.
I would push back strongly against the communism. Communism is dictatorship under the guise of a workers' movement.
No.
Communism.
Hold on, let Josh continue.
It is the exact same thing. I mean, even when you you read books like Animal Farm. Communism, it becomes the very thing that it is trying to destroy, trying to replace. It is not a system that can work in under any circumstances. Look at China, where you can't even, the government will just shut off your internet if they don't like what you're saying. They'll lock you up.
So first
People
of all,
have limited rights. That's not what we want. We want a socialist society where everybody can, if you have a business, if you have a service that you want to provide, you can provide it and you can sell it, but you're doing it at an even playing field. You don't have to go and compete against monopolistic corporations that are too big, that are gobbling up all the market share. That's what we need as a society.
communism is an economic theory. It is not inherently supposed to be based around dictators or fascists. Unfortunately, as human beings, our nature has carried us away. I think under communism, you can see the same principles of capitalism, i.e. there are strong leaders, those who have more of a say, have more power, and we use similar principles. Secondly, when you look at Animal Farm, it was written off the back of the Cold War. So, of course, its commentary is going to be really...
But we've seen it in history in action. We've seen what it does, how it manifests itself.
Communism is just an economic structure. Dictatorship is the governing structure.
But it leads to it.
You can't. No, it doesn't.
Yes,
you
it
can
does.
say capitalism leads
when
to
you have
dictatorship.
one party and one party
Josh,
controls the entire power structure,
You
it
can
becomes
say
the same
that
thing.
capitalism leads to dictatorship because we're walking in that direction right now. It's not about the economic structure. It is absolutely about the governing structure. You can have capitalism without having a dictatorship. We haven't seen successful iterations of it because A, when it was working, it got crushed by U.S. government or Western civilization. So that's one. And B, because the only ones they talk about are the ones where they're using extreme dictatorships. And let's use Cuba as an example. One of the reasons that Cuba has moved towards the governing structure it has moved towards is because countries like the United States have pushed to put sanctions on them to destroy the government.
Okay, well, what about Russia? What about Russia?
Russia was the same thing. The governing structure was problematic.
Well,
but it doesn't mean that that's the only way you can have a capitalistic system.
Hold on, Josh, because I'll say this. And, I hear all the alternatives, and I think that we all can agree that capitalism in itself is inherently racist
and white
and sexist.
Absolutely. It's not inherent. That's how it's manifested in the United States of America.
Where does capitalism...
Because they had slave labor. Yes, that's how they framed it around.
Josh, can I ask you a question? Where in the world is there capitalism and it is not dictated through white supremacy? Where?
You look at capitalist countries who have a homogenous population.
Name one. Just name one.
Japan.
Japan. All right.
Look at Japan has at least 90% of people who live in Japan are Japanese. They don't have these problems because
what?
Well, I'll say this. I will say this from an international perspective. Things did manifest differently in different countries. However, I think here in the United States, capitalism and white supremacy are embedded into each other. It's embedded in the fabric. So we can all agree that something does need to change. I will say personally, as much as I love the thought of becoming more socialist as a society, we see even all the pushback that Bernie Sanders gets, and he's a democratic socialist, and all he's trying to do is give everyone universal health care and give everyone the chance to have a public education. And this country is like, no, of course not. So to me, the practical thing to do at this point is for us to get our own. And I'm 100% about rebuilding Black Wall Streets and rebuilding those enclaves. So
they can bomb it again.
No, not so they can bomb it again.
If they bomb it again, rebuild it.
Right. Not only
you don't just quit.
But also, in the spirit of Killer Mike, if we are going to have our own, we need to protect our own. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way to fight back. We need our own, militia. We need our own little military. I'm just saying, if we want our own, we have to protect it.
I'm sorry, folks. I hear you, and that feels good in theory, but let me explain to you how the U.S. government works. Whenever there is any sign of legit black power getting built anywhere, the U.S. government moves efficiently and effectively to stifle it. If you don't believe me, Fred Hampton was building a rainbow coalition with poor white people, and they shot him to death in his bed with his pregnant wife and said that the Black Panthers attacked them. When Grenada overthrew the British colony and had black leadership, they assassinated the leader within 1 month. When Haiti was finally pulling away from France and was finally building its own economy, America came onto the land of Haiti, took the money from their bank, and said they were not responsible enough to run their own country, and pretty much ran a slave trade for 20 years, and it still has had their hand in that country since then. White supremacy, with the interest of capitalism, looks to stifle black power. So you can build it as much as you want. They will shoot and kill everyone and insult the
Stanley, your alternative is for us to all just lay on our backs and die and not do anything.
No.
Hold on, Stanley. That being said, if with all those historic examples that you gave, most of them were decades, if not centuries ago. A lot of things have changed.
Like what?
Slavery.
Selena,
No,
Haiti's
but let me
having a
finish.
revolution right now about the president that the America put in place.
Hold on, Stanley.
America just is trying to oust the Venezuelan president right now with a far-right leader. None of this stuff is new.
My question
It's
is
old.
for you. If that's not the way, what makes you think that pushing an even more radical agenda like socialism, which is what you said, is going to work?
So first off, socialism can work, but before you get to that, you have to topple white supremacy. That is the key piece right there. And if you're going to have a battle where people are going to have major losses and loot and not get a lot of things, you have to fight that battle first, because once you topple white supremacy, you can change the economic system.
Okay, but what's your plan to topple white supremacy?
Listen, hey.
Sorry, go ahead.
Let's get back to the verses that we had. We had economics and we had activism. I know that we're in capitalism right now, and there's no way that our society is going to shift. But how do we work on toppling white supremacy? How do we work on building socialist structures so that our people can meet basic needs? Activism. Black capitalism is not the solution because it's eating itself. It is inherently eating itself. But if we participate in the system and we buy black, we protect our communities, we pay attention to how our communities are being treated, and at the same time make cognizant choices when we vote about what policies are going to affect us the most. If we're joining community boards and making sure our voices are heard in not just national elections, but in local elections, if we actually put people power to the streets, there is no way that they can keep building on our backs.
That being said, Tammy, we do actually have to wrap up this conversation. But before we do, I do want to get everyone's final thoughts about the best way to empower our community. Josh?
I will just end with a quote by Kwame Ture. He said, "If you don't like me because of the color of my skin, that's your problem. If you can lynch me because of it, that's my problem."
Can you just give a little context behind that?
You just reinforced my argument with that statement.
No, I'm reinforcing my same argument. People have to empower themselves. That's the only way that we're going to topple white supremacy. As long as we're self-reliant on the white community, we're doing them a favor.
Stanley, final words. Best way to empower the black community.
The best way to empower the black community is to overthrow and topple white supremacy and get rid of whiteness. And that's not a thing that's going to happen tomorrow or even a week from now or even a year from now. That is a process that's going to take many, many years, and I will not live to see that day happen. But it starts with educating the community. It also includes making sure we're building sustainable spaces for black folks and helping us to understand why we need to be in this together for ourselves and people who look like us. And that is going to be a process that takes a long period of time, and it has to be done in the spirit of radical black liberation, moving away from the ideas of whiteness, white supremacy, and capitalism, because that's all extractive.
Thank you for that. And I'll end just by saying this. A few years ago, somebody told me, who was an activist in the movement, they said the best way to empower the people is to first empower yourself, because the practicality of it is, if you don't have shelter, if you're not eating, if you're not resting, if you don't have enough resources to live a good, healthy life, then you cannot benefit and help your community. And I say that to say this because the reality of the situation is, yes, we live in a capitalistic society that is extremely racist and sexist. And I do feel like a lot of us feel, especially those who are black and brown and from the most marginalized communities, we feel like it's time for us to get our own. And if we're going to get our own, we need to make sure those dollars are circulating within our communities so that we can build our power there and then work on whatever it is, the larger vision. whatever it is our Black agenda is going to look like, and we've talked about that in other shows, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we are first sustained, and then we are building towards a system and a structure that benefits us and that we're actually welcomed in. But to Stanley's point, that's not happening today, nor is it happening in our lifetimes, if you ask me in my opinion. But I do think today is the day for us to start on that journey. On that note, I want to thank everyone who listened and chimed in, especially via Facebook. Thank you so much for your comments, Instagram Live as well. And if you're listening via podcast, please reshare, tweet, give us feedback, and continue to listen. This is Let Your Voice